Hello, everyone. Welcome to the Monsoon 2022's Sea Conversations titled Drawing Out Natures. I'm Rohit Muzumdar. I teach at the School of Environment and Architecture. Over the last few months, starting June, we've been engaged in a series of conversations around questions of engagement with discussions around climate emergencies or ecological emergencies. Today's is the final conversation, the 9th conversation of this series. The series intends to open out conversations on the role of imaginations in inventing worlds and also how we come to understand them by constructing realities based on specific ways of seeing, listening, and sensing. It is an engagement towards making visible the invisible relations between natures and the natures of human and more than human agency. And it's in this lecture, which is going to focus on the natures of more than human agency, we have actually many attendees who are MAKSUD Ali Mondals. We've been able to clone MAKSUD Ali Mondal from being a presenter to also having many attendees who are MAKSUD Ali Mondals. So it's interesting, funny, but it's very nice in that sense too. We delve into the drawing out of natures to advance imaginaries of engagement with contemporary ecological crises and climate emergencies, and the contests that come to erode and expand socio-spatial claims in the shared ecologies of our worlds. This online series has been co-curated and supported by the Shared Ecologies program of the Shama Foundation, along with the ongoing support of Urban Center Mumbai. We have with us MAKSUD Ali Mondal and many MAKSUD Ali Mondals. MAKSUD Ali Mondal was born in Bankura, West Bengal, in India. His practice includes facilitating experiential understandings of organisms in a durational built microcosm using sculpture, painting, installation, and photography. His work studies microbial contamination, transformations and decomposition of organic matter by bacteria, fungi, creatures, fermentation, oxidation, rotting, and with the organic man-made found objects and everyday discarded materials, thereby generating reflections on how we understand ourselves in relation to each other and including other species in transforming the environment. In other words, how do we understand the relationship between nature and culture? So welcome, MAKSUD. Thank you for joining us. In this presentation, MAKSUD explicates the relationship between organisms vis-a-vis our place within the environment that brings us closely to consider the discourse of non-human agencies. Through his work, The Fungal Garden, Mondal accounts for the role of non-humans such as microorganisms, mycelium, fungi, insects, and plants in the creation of the environment. Such an approach may offer perspectives towards the idea of controlled environments, neglected and contaminated spaces, and possibilities of working spatially with particular materials. With that introduction, I'll invite MAKSUD to make his presentation, following which we can have a conversation. It's a pleasure to have you, MAKSUD, and engage in this conversation. Welcome.
Thank you, Rohit, for the introduction. Such a pleasure to be part of this online series of the conversation today. So I would like to thank School of Environment and Architecture, Shama Foundation, Urban Center Mumbai, as well as Rupali Gupta for connecting me here. So this is very interesting that in the beginning, how this MAKSUD name is, multiply on the digital platform. So it is something like the relationship between one species with another species, how unfortunate and unexpected things that, again, making a conversation in the part of this conversation. So I'll not take a longer of this presentation. I'll share two projects with few images. So I can share the screen.
Yes, Maksud, we can see it.
Yeah. Yeah, so the definition of nature and life and our relationship that changes according to the time as well as to the environment. So for me, nature is a very mysterious thing. And do you know that how much bacteria and spore are on the screen at the moment? Or this is a question that is emerging. How many spores that we inhale or while breathing or consume today with our food, some of even from the inedible mushroom. So human body or the human microbiome is the vast and complex ecosystem that exists on and within our bodies, consisting of trillions of bacteria and other microorganisms that interact with the human cells. And these are sometimes symbiotically, as we rapidly understanding this non-human life is essential to our body. Now, according to that, we can understand how complex is our place is if we talk about that non-human agencies or bacteria or the microorganisms which are almost invisible in the air. So this is now I'm going to share you this few glimpses of Fungal Garden, which was situated in the premises of MAKSUD, supported by Goethe Institute, Delhi, and conceived by Rux Media Collective in 2020. So this was a part of 5 million incident project. And I responded to the existing spore and microbes in the air and on the materials with giving certain conditions like moisture, humidity, and temperature. So the existing invisible microbial life, they get attracted by the condition and mutate into the contained ecosystem, which is visible at the moment in the screen. And Fungal Garden reveals wider boundaries to the concept of habitat and the relationship with the microbial life. So this is the installation become performances of the bacteria behavior and act of microorganism. So act of microorganism that according to the environment that exists in the with the biological processes and situates the space as an ever-changing evolving microcosm containing of numerous microorganisms in order to be whole and reflecting the cooperative but ever-changing composition of all the life that makes us to see the rot and decay. Inside the space, various microbes, fungi, insect born, live, and die on the work, and visitors are becoming part of that ecosystem as well as element of the work. Eventually, so the processes generate aesthetic experiences, and that leads viewers to observe a range of species around them as a kind of interconnected by the time and experience. So we can see that already we discussed human are not a single organism or entity, but a form of vast similar organism working together. So this is like dynamic experiential communication between people and fungal growth as a biological process. So the viewers enter to the space in which his or her senses are detected by the behavior of fungi, mycelium, smell, rot, and decay. So this is a conversation between human body, and so it is like through the viewers, that when they are entering to a space and it's communicating each other, it's like interspecies communication is happening in this particularly space. And we know that our body carries trillions of microorganisms, they carry which human are host and make partnership with them. And given that human evolved along with these organisms, so we eventually do not realize this vast library of microorganisms that exist in our body. And not only the body, also is surrounded in our places. So while we interact with this installation and huge number of microorganisms, space and the body both responses to each other and can change our heart rate, and our nervous system start producing signals within the body. So this space is, that I already said, that is like a performance that by the organism and the biological processes. So while we are visiting this space, our body responding to this installation. So in that case, the microbes that both are helpful and potentially harmful, but most of the symbiotic. So by this engaging of the senses, depending on the viewer's works, changes and defines its own time and situation. And these are the microbial activities. This evolved by the time. Every time when we are going, we're seeing that it's evolving. Today, what we are seeing is tomorrow is not there, or maybe the changes, changing the colors, changing the form. And yeah, so these are the microorganism and happening every moment, that sometimes those are not visible in the moment we see through the naked eyes. And mushroom represent not only the biological cycle of renewal at this work, but also philosophical and metaphorical way. So this is also, this emerged in the installation, and while it's the biological process is happening in between. And these whole biological processes and non-human interaction are happening beyond the human visibility. So brightening light to invisibly small scale arrangement of microscope, these images may help emphasize the minute activity and delicate nature of microbial life. So there are a lot of microorganisms, they are coming inside and germinating, spore are germinating, they interacting with the other insect are coming and eating the mycelium and fungi, which are growing on the installation. We can see this is the spore and it's the time to disperse. So the installation is when this activity is growing, and the full ecosystem is becoming the contamination zone of several fungi and spores, which are dispersing, is coming from outside, and from the installation itself is going outside as well. You can see this insect is coming and eating those small microbial or mycelium or fungi or molds which are growing in the installation. So this whole natural phenomena and non-human interaction are happening beyond the human visibility. And I created a photo book out of these microscopic images of incidents and living organisms from this installation. So aesthetically, experience to generate a new insight into the nature of organism, object, and information. So while I'm seeing and observing, I become an observer of the work. It's not like it's done is the pre-existing idea is done over the period, but while it's happening, it's evolving like a mushroom. So while these images and video I'm taking through the observation, this is also becoming part of the another extension version. Like some of the videos from this microorganism I kept in a restaurant, which is like one insect is eating mycelium. So it is, we can see it in the restaurant, like while we are having food. So one insect is eating a mycelium and one we are eating food as well. So what are the relationship again happening while we are seeing at the insect while eating? So this is the conversation that was happening. And there, while this thing happening, I created a walkthrough into the space of the installation. So I invited people, whoever can come into this space, and there was so this is like a event and tour, and to see the garden and observe through the microscope. So people can see that what is happening through the human visibility. That can be insect, that can be mycelium, that can be fungi. So there are a lot of things that this is like another layer of seeing something, and that's revealing from the installation. So while we are traveling to this space, it's like a contamination space again. And after this, we went for a discussion, and there was a mushroom soup, a cup of mushroom soup made by Chris Mericurian for the viewers. So that mushroom soup is about talking about this agricultural processes, that how we are producing mushroom in the area of not letting the space contaminate. So mushroom is produced from the lab, so where we don't allow microbes to germinate there or easily access, because we are looking for particularly one species. So, sorry. So I think I missed something. I'm sorry. Yeah. So when someone entering to this space and microcosm for the outside and leaving the spores we carry in our body, and space become a contamination zone of various microorganisms, as well as our body is getting contaminated. And when we consuming soup, that is another component going to our body and mixing all together, and started conversation about that. So what is in our body and on our body and in the microcosm that I built. So this all together mixing within the space and our body itself. So mixing all together, the conversation started, and that extended to the idea of contamination, agriculture, and questioning about belonging, who will be there, who will come, and where we'll live together. And also there was a written poem by Kanhopad. So this is a Bengali poem called Chotrak, and I'm going to read that now. So আবর্জনাজীবী ছত্রাকের মতোই ভাগাড় নিবাসী আমি, জন্মের পর চোখ খুলে দেখেছি রাশি রাশি খাবার, তবুও রোজ ভোরপেট ক্ষুধা নিয়েই ঘুমিয়ে পড়ি, আবার সকালে ডেকে দেয় জঠরের অ্যালার্ম ঘড়ি, জীবনের যান চলছে ক্ষুধার জ্বালানিতেই. I don't know how much I can explain in English, but it's difficult, very difficult to explain, but I'll try my best to explain as much possible. So it's like a mushroom or fungus that's talking that fungus is living in a garbage. And after birth, I opened my eyes and saw a lot of food. However, I sleep with a hungry stomach every day, and life is going on because of the hunger. So, and this conversation, so ভোরের ক্ষুধা জাগার সঙ্গে সঙ্গে স্তূপীকৃত রাশি রাশি খাবারের উপর ঝাঁপিয়ে পড়ি রোজ। চৈত্রে যেমন গরু বাছুরেরা হামলে পড়ে বহু চর্বিত মাছের ঘাসের উপর, কার্তিকে যেমন কামলারা গোগ্রেসে গেলে ফেন মেশানো কাউয়ের চাও, ঠিক তেমনি, তবে ওদের মতো অত কষ্ট আমার নেই। As soon as I woke up hungry in the morning, I jumped on the food every day, but I don't have so much travel like them. So like it's talking about this animals who is very hungry, and then when they find a pasture of a green land, and then how they feel like to eating them. So it's talking about like I don't have that much uh, you know problem, but I also like it's not like travel like them. So চারপাশে রাশি রাশি খাবারের সর্বসত্ব আমার, টিস্যু পেপারে লেগে থাকা কেকের টুকরো, বুয়ার ফাঁকিবাজিতে ছালে লেগে থাকা রসালো ফল, আধ পচা দু একটা ফলও আসে মাঝে মধ্যে, আমি ক্রমাগত খেয়ে চলি দুপুর অবধি। I own all the food around, pieces of cake stuck or to tissue paper, juicy fruit, once or two half-ripe fruits also come sometimes. I eat continuously until noon. তারপর আমার মায়ের সৎ ভাই সূর্চি মামা পিঠের চামড়ায় যখন চাবুক পেটাতে থাকেন, তখন পলিথিন স্তূপের আড়ালে একটু আত্মগোপনে যায়। Then my mother's stepbrother son, when whipping the skin of the back, I hide behind the polythene. এর মধ্যে আস্তে থাকে আরো অনেক অনেক খাবার, হাড্ডিতে লেগে থাকা মাংস কোনা, আধ খাওয়া মাছের টুকরো, সামান্য ময়লা মাখা ভাত, প্যাকেটের অর্ধেক ভরা বিরিয়ানি, লিপস্টিক লেগে থাকা চিকেন ফ্রাইও মেলে মাঝে মধ্যে, পোলাও, কোরমা, বিরিয়ানি এসব আমার রোজকার আহার্য। So more food started coming in between. Bites of fish, meat stuck to the bone, dal rice which is mixed with the dust, half packet of biryani, lipstick stuck to chicken fries occasionally. So পোলাও, কোরমা, বিরিয়ানি is my daily food. তো এই সামান্য বাসি গন্ধটুকু লাগে হয়তো, ওটা তখন আমার, ওইটা এখন আমার সয়ে গেছে। আমার তো অনেক ওগুলোকেই আসল স্বাদ মনে হয়, হয়তো বাসি হওয়ার আগে কখনো খাইনি বলে। So it smell a little bit, but I'm habituated to that. I think they taste like the real, maybe because I never eat them before they go stale. আমার বিকেলের নাস্তাটাও বেশ ভারিক্কি চালে হয়, কলার খোসা, বাসি পাউরুটি, কিংবা একটু শক্ত হয়ে যাওয়া ডালপুরি, খেতে খেতে কখন সূর্য ডুবে যায় টের পায় না। So it's about like my afternoon snack is also pretty heavy, eating peel of bananas, bread, or slightly hardened dal puri. I did not realize them when sun goes down. আকাশে যখন আবিরের রং লাগে আর রাস্তায় গাড়ি থেকে নেমে লাল নীল আলোয় ফুচকা খায় জোড়া জোড়া মানুষ, তখন আমি আমার নগ্ন দেহ নিয়ে একবার বিদ্রূপ করে আসি ওদের সভ্যতার বেশ বিন্যাসকে। When the sky changes color and people get down from the car on the road and eat pani puri, then with my naked body I once mocked their civilization. ওরা অবশেষে আমায় দেখে নাকে রুমাল চাপে, তাতে বয়ে গেল আমার। পৃথিবীর সমস্ত স্বাস্থ্যকলাকে আমার শীর্ণ বুড়ো আঙ্গুল দেখিয়ে বেঁচে আছি, একটি বিষাক্ত মহিলাজীবী ছত্রাক। So however, they show me and put a handkerchief on their nose, giving all the health care in the world may skin a thumbs up. I am alive, a poisonous parasitic fungus. So this is that how it's usually it's like a metaphor as a mushroom that is speaking about the world, about the relationship between us and the position of the mushroom, how it is neglected. And so this is a very metaphor that we can connect to the multiple areas. So to give you a little more context about my work, I want to talk about the site-specific installation, nature unconditioned. a work exhibited at Kochi Students Biennale in 2018 to 19. So this was condition abandoned warehouse that was once used, but in times it was abandoned. So which I covered entirely with growing different kinds of microorganisms such as mold, mycelium, mushroom, and this space was transformed into an autogenetic space. So this is the project that I inspired from the architecture of Kerala, and where they allow natural activity inside the architecture. And that was also connected to the Rabindranath Thakur's philosophy about the nature and idea of inside and outside. So when I entered to this space, it was abundant, and I saw that lot of activities happening. So I started collecting those material such as mycelium, that can be mushroom, a piece of wood, a piece of plaster, or maybe that iron is rusting. So there are a lot of things happening, and I collected as like a biological processes that's happening into the space before I'm entering. And there was also a herbarium of plants which was growing on the wall. So this is the situation that I kept in the table to interact with the viewers, that what was the situation and what is made after that. So this is the processes that was happening. This was the situation that was there before. And after the investigation, I interact with, like I transformed a section of this warehouse into a space for growing mushroom and fungus. So the space is entirely dedicated to this, reading this architecture and the space that continually mutating with the free growth of nature. But by the end of this intended duration, it was covered entirely with different kind of mushroom and fungus. So this is the work that I was working with space and microorganism that's dealing with our spaces. So as we discuss about this, like how there is no such empty spaces that we see. We can't see even that microorganism around us. So we see that this is empty spaces, but there are a lot of things happening beyond visibility. So I respond to that and work with that, or given certain condition that respond to that particularly material I use, and so that that invisible entities that they can respond and germinate and make a habitat for them. So so the work I produce basically, or particularly these two projects that I have shared with you, it's like a as I'm dealing with the real form of life and mushrooms during the work, that I produce a lot of entity and disperse spore in the air, and work exists in different form of life in the nature. So in that context, that after the duration of the work is never going to be end in particular situation, because the mushroom was growing in the space, they disperse a lot of spore in the air, like the fungal garden I shared in the beginning. So it was done in the premises of a garden. So there were already existing phenomena, or entities or spores that was in the air and on the material, but after the interventions of the space, so they disperse a lot of spore in the air, and that exists in the end. And this is my practices and work that I wanted to share with you. Yeah, thank you. Yeah,
Thanks,
thank you, Rohit. Yeah.
Thanks, MAKSUD, for that presentation. It's really lovely to see all of those experiments. And one of the things that you kind of, started off with and posed, you use the word that humans live with many other species. So that intertwining that you're kind of focusing on, which is, it is possible to be human, not in opposition to the non-human or more than human, but in relationship with several other species, and in kind of imagining, um, and in spite of this, we kind of think about imaginations of nature in largely dualistic ways, or kind of in opposition to something that is non-human. So that's a very powerful provocation to kind of start thinking and considering, um, in terms of not only the relationships that exist between human and more than human life, um, but the new ones that are emerging, and also others that could be invented in that sense. So that, I mean, as a presentation, the first one of the first points that I take away, or kind of hear you very loudly, is making this forceful point. So that's something that I wanted to kind of foreground. While having said that, I think there are a couple of things that come to my mind as you went through your slides in making your presentation. The term itself, your use of the term itself, fungal garden, and not either as waste or as a forest or as wilderness, itself is powerful in thinking about a language for relationships that emerge in nature and produce forms of life which engage with humans. The idea of the garden as against wilderness or the forest itself is a powerful vocabulary. And while you kind of took us through your slides, you mentioned several kinds of things focusing on processes, and some of the terms that you use: oxidation, rotting, decomposition, contamination, transformation. I'm wondering, as you kind of work through uh, studying fungi or microorganisms of different kinds, apart from the processes themselves, I mean, is there a way in which you kind of engage with thinking about form? And this is something that I want to kind of open out as a conversation with you. And how do you think about that form of life? I mean, two points I want to kind of foreground here is that when one starts thinking in terms of architecture, why the reason why I make this point is usually one thinks in terms of permanence, architecture that is always kind of built to last, whereas things that seem to be temporary are often seen as degraded or devalued. And here you're kind of in these processes, you're opening out that space or spatiality itself is an ever forming thing. Even if things might be decomposing, rotting, oxidizing, getting contaminated, they're transforming, and there is a form to it. So I mean, if you can kind of in your practice, in your visual practice of engaging with sculpture, painting, or other forms of engagement, how do you understand its questions around form in this life? So I kind of pose that question for you to respond, and then we can either open this conversation to the audience, or we'll I can pose a follow-up question. Yeah.
Yeah. So this is very interesting, and I think it's a very large thing to talk about, but I'll try my best to keep it in short. So this is a practice that emerge from the questions that so the architecture is a cultural object, and as we try to protect ourselves from the natural resources that happen, so likewise that from the rain, from the thunder, or any kind of natural process, that we try to protect ourselves and our things around which we don't want to let them. So this is a process of engaging and creating a questions between that to hold something permanently or let them go. So this is the question that within the architecture, so we can't say that there is no wilderness in the architecture, that we try to preserve it in this context. So if we just left one house for a like 1 year or 2 year or further, and we don't do anything, we just keep away from that, we can see that how wilderness exists into that. So we can see that a huge sections of transformation that's happening into that space. So that these questions always bring me to the practice that what we should preserve, and what should in beyond that should we preserve or not. But beyond that what is the relationship then, when we know that everything will going to be decay or destroy, but still we think that this question of we always try to protect something. So this is a certain feelings that we know that the something, maybe it's like a leaf or something like a flower, we try to keep, preserve it, and but in the condition they start growing fungus or going decay or fade out. So something we know that this is the reality or the process, it will happen continue, but we always, the relationship is always we try to protect them. So like even if we talk about a cultural object or piece of art or painting specifically, so that going to be preserved for a longer period of time. So in the museum, they always try to protect them from the incident or microbial activity, and that always happen into that particular work. But what about to create a conversation or bringing them into the work? So this was the questions that while nature has that potential things to change something, or so this is like the discourse between the power generation of or the thinking of the human and cultural activities that we think. And I don't know whether your questions is
Yeah, you did, and I've kind of want to take this a little further in terms of the conversation. One of the things that I was wondering as you kind of made your presentation is that the two kinds of things that you're doing in your work. I mean, at certain points in time, you're kind of engaging with studying, say, fungi or microorganisms in setting a lab-like environment, like setting them up in a non-contaminated environment, and how they're transforming it. At other moments in time, you're drawing them out of the lab like environment. One of the things that has emerged in recent conversations, in studying more than human life or non-human life, has been around the idea of biomimicry. And in the early 20th century, I mean, industrialized modes of agriculture tried to kind of, harness certain kinds of relationships. The question that I have at this moment in terms of your work is, in what direction, is your work thinking in terms of within the discussions that are happening in terms of biomimicry? Because what comes out very powerfully to me in your work is that there are relationships that are emerging between different kinds of microorganisms, fungi, or other organisms. So they are in a conversation with one another. There's knowledge that is exchanged. I mean, also, one could kind of pose it as cybernetic knowledge, that there is a kind of action and then there is a feedback loop. And does that emerge as a focus of study, or it does not? Towards what end is it directed towards, in the sense that why at this moment should we be focusing on such works at this contemporary moment in time? Yeah.
So yeah, this is very interesting question. I mean, so while I'm practicing art, and the background of my is like morely like a visual art practitioner. As a visual art practitioner, I think the practice is more like a collaboration with science and art and agriculture, gardening. So the all this is all coming together. It's not a single thing that we are thinking about. But science is a institution, and there is a certain way to think about. So before I work on something or some project, I used to go to study at the lab. So what they do, so to see that what kind of processes they use to do, and what is the idea of science. So while I'm doing something, I'm questioning again with this area of cultural practices. And there is a poetic approach. I'm taking resources from the science, and that's again it is emerging a new language in the contemporary practice, that this between, so there is a no exact way of saying this is a scientific practice, or this is a like, so this is a in between practices, that it is much more like a poetic approach that I'm taking. But taking the act of like giving example to the nature unconditioned, that I collected biological and kept biological stuff on the table, to so that viewers can come and see and can relate to that, like there is a scientific tool. But while they're seeing it, they saw that the huge installation and around this fungal body of the architecture. So now that is changing while we are entering to the space, because of that is also a biological changes. So while I was talking about that, our while we are inhaling so much spores, that is also biological transformation that happened to our body, and itself also in the mind, that what is happening here as a lab. So if we think as a lab, it's like contamination space. So I think that culture, there is no such divided thing, because we can't say this like if we talk about monoculture. So in the agricultural practices, that with growing one species in a particular space. But can we do that? Because we know that there are a huge even you don't like, which we don't want, like a weed that they grow in that area. So we have to again make separation of the plants. So I am taking this to further that questions, and beyond that, like in the lab, I know that there are so many, so they wanted to separate the organism, but sometimes they think it's a fault because they contaminate. And I think that is the possibility of nature and the aesthetic of the nature. This is always like all like sometimes we talk about, like today I read a poem on Bengali, and this is like Bengali and English is like a combination of two language. And also we used to of this type of languages that we use is not a single languages that sometimes we. So this is something that I want to take in the further and through these processes. Yeah.
Nice. That's very powerfully kind of articulated, in the sense that, I mean, the word for it would be hybrid as a nature. Like it's not human or non-human, but there's a hybrid nature that you seem to be foregrounding in what you said, that there is no one thing, but things are always in a hybrid state. And if when one is kind of then thinking about hybrids, the third kind of question that I have, and then I'll open it up to the audience questions, is relationships between species can be beneficial, but also very devastating. And in the context of this kind of these relationships, which can be devastating but also beneficial, how does one approach an engagement with engaging you know, more than human life, microbes, or at large, and towards what ends, and how do you kind of, think through this?
Yeah, so so this activity of like microorganism or non-human elements, so that if we think about that from the perspective of beneficial or not, so we know that we have fear of it actually. So like we have fear of damp of the wall. If it's happened to our places, we try to remove it. If it is in the fridge, that food is, started growing some fungi, we just try to avoid this. But in the like, if there are a very large amount of food that we cultivate this kind of organism or bacteria, like curd, one of them, cheese, one of them. So we work on that. We use that beneficial bacteria into the culture to create certain condition, certain so that beneficial organism can work together. But again, so we are usually working on this beneficial organism in the nature that exists, and this is also in our body. Like we try to protect our body from the bacteria that harm to us. So while this conversation is becoming part of it, so there are a huge numbers of bacteria that combine together each other, like a beneficial and which is not beneficial, I mean which is harmful for us, but they'll exist all together. But according to the beneficial of the bacteria, so this is about something that which we are in the center, which we don't want and which we want. So this is a like very human centric perspective. So which we think is harmful for us, it is also important to the environment. In the context of, if you see the termites eat the wooden books or wooden or something like the structure, it is, we think it's a harmful. So but it is also important to decay the woods from eating by eating termites. So it is like the same that we talk. So how we can say that it is a beneficial, because of in terms of the human is in the center. So it's depend on like, yeah.
Thanks.
Yeah.
Thanks. I mean, kind of, how do you think of extraction in other kinds of ways? Not basically, extraction of value is what the way usually think of things, but you're trying to open out other values that emerge over here. I'll open up the discussion to questions from the audience. So we have one question, and so this is Srishti, who says, "Hi Maksud, this is Srishti, and I would like to say that I really like your works, and especially the way you conclude your presentation by saying that your works are present everywhere in the form of spores. Those travel so many places." So my question was that, will you say about drawing a mushroom in your sketchbook and growing a mushroom in your garden? What will you say about drawing a mushroom in your sketchbook and growing a mushroom in your garden? How will they differ in both cases? What are your views?
Hi Srishti, it's nice to hear from you. It's interesting questions. I mean, of course, it is like, if it's a, yeah, I also do sketches, but if I talk about the difference between growing and sketch is basically, I am just mimicking only one aspect of mushroom. If I'm talking about a mushroom. So mimicking in the sense of it can be like a form of or shape of the mushroom that I am maybe expressing on the page, or it is a particularly one way of looking at the mushroom while it is in the sketchbook. Or if I talk about this growing things, I don't know because it is mysterious for me, because it is about giving a condition, not to, like, there is no such hand of me that I can, it's about the condition that I grow. And here I'm drawing a mushroom. It's a totally different, because of that there is no control over the mushroom growing. I don't know what my shape would be. So there is a unexpected activity that can emerge from the growing things. And the whole scenario of my practice, it is much more about this unexpected activity. I don't know what is growing today and what will happen tomorrow. I don't know that mushroom will come or not. It is about the climate, it is about the material, it is about the environment. So this is like that something, even like I don't know. I'm an observer in that context. While I'm coming to the work, I'm becoming an observer, and that is the role of my growing things, or to create a space for like that, so that as the nature can recreating, again is the extent of the nature, and I'm again the mysterious person for that. So yeah, that unexpected thing will happen, and that is the thing find me interesting. And yeah, that's why I just do such work. Maybe I'm clear or not, I don't know. Yeah.
Maybe, Dipti, would you like to draw Shishti inside if she wants to kind of, build or kind of ask a follow-up question? No force, just in case if she wants to come in.
Yeah, Shishri will have to raise her hand because it's the same name, so I will not be able to recognize whom it is
Okay.
getting.
I mean, if she may not want to come in, but it's Maksud who asked Maksud the question. And
this is very interesting, no? That we know that we all are different, but by the name we can't recognize the people.
yeah, so like one of my colleagues who uses the idea of the glitch to kind of think of its productive possibilities is something that has kind of happened over here. And when you say that the two things combined, they become hybrid. It's a glitch that produces many kinds of possibilities. So that was fascinating.
Yeah. Srishti, would you like to talk about something that if you're
Yeah, so there is a second person who's wanting to come in, and Anuj Taga wants to come in to have a conversation. Yeah, Dipti, can you get Anuj in? And then if Shishti wants to come in, she'll join us.
Hi. Can you hear
Hi,
me?
Anuj. Yeah. How are you?
Hi, Maksud. Good. It was a lovely presentation,
Thanks.
primarily because it, opened up so many dimensions of thinking. So thank you so much for this presentation. And all this while I've been thinking about how your work is, or how your practice is different than the, Renaissance naturalist. And although that work kind of was born in the spirit of humanism, with human at the center, you are trying to kind of decenter the human through this kind of act. But I was still kind of wondering that how does it how do you um, consider the centrality of agency in the production of your work itself, because it is finally the artist who is creating space, or who is creating the opportunity for these microbial environments to perpetuate in some way. So that was one question, that how do you subvert that actually and let the microbial activity take over. That is number one. Number two, I was thinking of um, are we like how do we save ourselves from the objectification of the microbes in this process, because still there is this large element in the exhibiting of it and the environment also, there is a particular way in which we come to encounter, and it relies a lot on seeing. Although uh, we are absorbing them through all our senses. So and even in that, the work kind of tries to, or in some sense, even without wanting to objectify it, kind of in some sense, you know, treats it as the other. Or I don't know. I mean, it'll be nice if you can elaborate on that.
Yeah.
And lastly, what meaningful conversation in that sense could we establish then from or with microbe? Because um, and how do we do that? If we were to kind of really, because that would mean surrendering our agency to a large extent. So yeah, these are things that I was thinking, and if you could respond, how do you negotiate all these things in your work and your practice with the microbes?
Yeah, according to your last question, that about the potential of microbes, and the entities that exist within our work and within space. So so there are a lot of researches that is going on the microbes at the moment because of about the accessibility of the technology that we might get after the 1960s or maybe later, or so there are a huge section of research that going on within the world.
Yeah.
So that is a possible way of working, not only through that scientific definition of how we understand the microbes, but as well from the other perspective that I'm thinking as a like how another approaches that microbes can be from the perspective often to be an artist, like how so there is a like the metaphorical way that that the poem I read today. So it is about the metaphorical aspect of looking at the microorganism or a fungi that exists. So that can be all together. One is from the perspective of biological and it might be a philosophical way. So these are the possibility that we can work on. And that's why I think this the discipline can merge together. I mean, that is an interesting point that we can take it further in the future maybe. So this is that I will talk about, and about the first questions that how that you about the Renaissance and my practice. So it is interesting because I'm as a trained artist from the art school. So we trained like lots of like drawing, painting, acrylic painting, oil painting. So we used to do those paintings, and I was always, it was always fascinating for me to capture the moment of transformation that's happened within the natural world. So I used to draw them. I used to make some, painting out of this when I'm going to, landscape. I capture those moments, but I was never satisfied with those because what I am observing in the nature, it was not that after seeing my artwork, I was not, not feeling well to what I am getting from the nature. So it was always questioning me that what should be the role of myself while I'm producing the artwork. What is what will be the material of the work? So I was looking and experimenting with a lot of things that what can be within the work. So I was doing oil painting and I saw that microbes are starting growing. I mean, that fungus is started growing. So then it was the first role that I was thinking, let them happen. So it is the artwork is becoming like a food for them. Then I started questioning that, okay, this is very interesting thing that they wanted to eat the artwork. So this is, then I started letting them happen. And then again, I started collecting some object as like paper, canvas, and then I let them in the nature to see what kind of possibility that actants that can on the objects. And then I bring back in the studio to see that there are so many things happened into the just blank paper. So termites eaten, some molds started growing, some mosses started growing. I left one canvas on the pond to see like what kind of organism they can be. So to see and observe, so you can see that how the transformation from the painting itself, from the seeing a particular perspective. Yeah. So there is a perspective that is changing, and that how should be my role while I'm producing an object. So should be the entities including into the artwork or not. So this is the way, and I think this is also a possibility that of the current environment and situation that we are in, that there are a lot of possibility to work with scientists, to access the lab. I mean, these are the possibilities that I used to go there and to see, and that way the practice, I mean, emerge and create a lot of questions to see the nature in another way, and it's give me another layer of seeing an object, or yeah, of course. So in that sense, like most of the work of mine is like a durational. They don't exist in physical form, but we can also the biological form. I mean, they exist in another way. Like how I said that spores. Like Srishti asked me about that a spore exists, and in the air. So that is also a part of that. It's not like something I'm doing alien, but it is also like a part of the conversation. Yeah,
very, very fascinating. Thank you so much for sharing this.
Yeah, thank you.
Thanks, Anuj, for that intervention. Rupali would like to ask a question or kind of come into the conversation. So, Dipti, can we draw Rupali into the conversation? Yeah, hi, Rupali.
Sorry. Hi, MAKSUD.
Hi, how are you?
Hi. Lovely. Really lovely to see your work here. And I was also at the 5 million incidents, so also kind of saw the work physically. And what really kind of had struck me at that time was also the visceral sort of presence of this work, right? Which is sort of alive, I mean, in some ways, architecture that we engage in is not really alive. It's almost sort of dead. It stays there, but you can almost feel the presence of things growing and changing around you, and that was really striking. But I think what was also interesting in the conversation right now, and would be really nice for you to also kind of probably speak of those coordinates where like you speak about the philosophical ways of looking at this sort of engagement. What would it mean to perhaps rethink some of these terms by which we kind of live our lives? Like the word contamination itself, right? Like, I mean, in some ways, it also points to some of the binaries through which we live our lives: the nature, culture, something that is kind of the pure and the contaminated. So what would that mean to somehow rethink the terms by which we live our lives currently? How does that sort of open up, other coordinates of living our lives for us? That would be perhaps interesting for us to also think through, no?
Yeah, this is very interesting and thought-provoking questions. Thank you for the question. This is something very interesting that about the term contamination. I mean, I use as a biological process, but also it can be used as a metaphor that I already said. That what kind of contamination it is. Like if you are talking about the cultural, which two culture, coming to us, or something that we live in. So there is no particular culture, it is in a particular location. So there are a huge cultural exchange that happen to the cultural practices. Like if we talk about the current politics, that we try to divide certain belongings from somewhere. So this is a like ecological problem also. So if we try to separate things, it can become a problem. It can become a problem for the both entities who are shifting to somewhere or who is existing there. So both so now in this current scenario we exist all together. It is like an interdependency of each other. So its benefits, it's also about that mutual understanding of each other, like how we get benefit from somewhere or they are also getting benefited from us. So it is something that this is also about the conversation that is emerged from the and also that in the event that I did in Goethe Institute. So this contamination idea was happening while this that politics of CA and NRC was happening in the duration of that particular project, and this conversation went to there also. It's like who will belong from where. So and who is going and who can divide the cultural activity separately. So this is the questions that emerge from certain other idea of contamination as a cultural belonging. So these are the questions that we can think about. And also that mushroom live in a particular location. I mean particular location in the sense of like life and death in between that. So when there is an example of after the Hiroshima destroyed a landscape and into there is a book called Mushroom at the End of the World. There is a written that from that destroyed landscape there is one mushroom that called Matsutake. So that this is an interesting way to think that while we think that mushroom lives in a death and life in between that, so something after like a leaves is decaying or death, that mushroom is emerging. So something new from the one layer to another is coming. So this is a beautiful things that in the life that happen. We think through the mushroom that if something is destroyed, maybe something will emerge again. There is no ending of something. There is no ending of life. So I think these are the philosophical aspects that we can talk about through the mushroom, through the mycelium, through the contamination, smell, decay. So these are the very interesting role that play in my work. I mean, yeah.
Thanks. No, I think it gives us many clues to rethink our everyday lives in many ways, and also at multiple scales, whether it is the absolute sort of everyday relationship to kind of thinking of larger cultural politics. So I think it's very thought-provoking, and would really love to see where the work goes from here. So thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thanks, Rupali. So if there are no other questions or comments, I'd like to thank MAKSUD for joining us today and making a wonderful set of provocations. We are very grateful, thankful to you to join us in making these provocations, and we will be in conversation with you as and when other opportunities arise. So thank you, MAKSUD. I would also like to thank the Shama Foundation as well as the Urban Center Mumbai for the support in this series of Sea Conversations, and also my colleagues who've been working towards putting this series together. So thank you, all of you, and we will come back next semester with a new series of Sea Conversations that we will announce in the coming weeks. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Rohit. And thank you everyone for listening with this much time and spending a lot of time here. And thank you everyone for creating such a platform to talk about this multiple way of looking at architecture, environment, actants, agencies. I mean, it's a very provoking, no? So in the conversation.
Thank you. It's a
thank you.
pleasure.
Yeah.
Bye-bye.
Yeah, bye.